In April 2025, the world was jolted awake. China abruptly halted rare earth exports. Beijing's new controls were a direct response to fresh U.S. tariffs, but the so-called export licenses didn't exist, freezing global supply overnight. The silence from Chinese ports was deafening. Shipments stopped, orders vanished. Industries worldwide, from Detroit to Tokyo, panicked. Imagine building cars with no engines. That was the scale of the crisis. Rare earths aren't optional. They're essential for everything from smartphones to fighter jets. The global supply chain seized up instantly, exposing a vulnerability few had truly grasped. Beijing's message was chilling. Minerals, not missiles, could bring economies to their knees. In Washington, the shock was immediate. President Trump's tariffs had triggered a weaponized response. Suddenly, the U.S. and its allies realized just how dependent they were on a single supplier. The world's technological foundation was built on materials now locked behind China's bureaucratic wall. Automakers halted production, tech giants faced shortages. The global trade system, decades in the making, fractured in real time. Was this a negotiating tactic or a permanent shift in power? The crisis forced a new, sobering reality. A single decision in Beijing could paralyze the world's most advanced economies. The era of minerals as weapons had begun. The world was left scrambling, uncertain if this was a temporary standoff or the start of a new economic order. The shockwaves were only just beginning. What are rare earths, and why do they matter so much? They're not actually rare, but they're tough and dirty to mine and process. 17 elements like neodymium and dysprosium power our modern lives, hidden in everything from smartphones to wind turbines. Your phone's screen, speakers, and even the glass rely on them. So do electric cars, fiber optics, and MRI machines. But their importance goes far beyond gadgets. For the U.S. military, rare earths are non-negotiable. An F-35 jet needs over 900 pounds, a submarine more than 9,000. They're critical for missile guidance, radar, and advanced communications, the backbone of national defense. That's why China's move was so alarming. It wasn't just about iPhones, but about security. The U.S. defense industry found itself reliant on its main rival for the materials that keep it strong. The export halt exposed a vulnerability decades in the making. Suddenly, the invisible became visible, and the absence of rare earths threatened not just the economy, but national security. The world realized, without these elements, modern life and defense grind to a halt. The stakes had never been higher. The scramble for alternatives was on. How did China gain such power? It was no accident. While others shut down rare earth mines over costs and pollution, China ramped up, subsidizing the industry and accepting the environmental toll. Today, China processes over 90% of the world's rare earths, and nearly all of the most critical types. When Vietnam's last major refinery closed in 2023, China's grip tightened further. Other countries mine some more, but must send it to China for processing. Beijing's leverage is immense, and they've used it before, restricting exports of other key materials and even banning the export of extraction technology. The world outsourced its environmental mess and industrial security to China, enjoying cheap tech until the trap snapped shut. Now with the doors locked, the world is scrambling for a way out. The fallout was immediate. U.S. factories stalled as rare earth parts vanished from supply chains. Assembly lines for electric cars and wind turbines slowed, then stopped. Europe's auto industry slashed output. Jobs and production evaporated. But the pain didn't stop at the factory gates. It hit Wall Street and Main Street. Investors panicked. The dollar plunged to new lows as confidence in America's economic stability wavered. Billions fled U.S. Treasury bonds, raising borrowing costs and fueling inflation. Suddenly everyday goods got pricier, and the government faced tough choices. The rare earth crisis revealed a harsh truth. America's economic might was built on a fragile supply chain controlled by its rival. The shock was industrial and financial, striking at the very heart of U.S. power. The world's reserve currency was no longer untouchable. Washington scrambled. Diplomacy raced ahead, but desperation was clear. Publicly, officials projected strength. Privately, they knew the U.S. was cornered. The administration explored every option: mining at home, deals abroad, and emergency executive orders. Greenland's rare earths drew sudden interest. Vice President Vance made a high-profile visit. The goal: build a secure domestic supply chain from mine to magnet. The Pentagon had invested millions, but the U.S. lagged far behind China's output. MP Materials, America's leader, would produce just 1,000 tons of magnets, compared to China's 138,000. Lab breakthroughs were celebrated, but commercial production was years away. The U.S. faced a daunting climb, rebuilding an abandoned industry at breakneck speed. The clock was ticking, and the world was watching. This isn't just a story for politicians, it hits your wallet too. Disrupted supply chains and a weaker dollar mean higher prices for electronics, cars, and more. Factory slowdowns threaten jobs and financial security. The rare earth crisis marks the end of an era. Globalization's risks are now painfully clear. Countries are rethinking supply chains, prioritizing security over efficiency. The world may become more fragmented, with higher costs but greater resilience. For the U.S. and allies, it's a generational challenge. Rebuild industry, invest in new tech, and forge new alliances. There's no quick fix, only hard choices and long-term effort. This crisis is a wake-up call. Our global systems are fragile and economic interdependence can be weaponized. The future of technology, prosperity, and security depends on how we respond. The world of 2025 has changed forever. The next chapter is up to us.